Hi, Hugo Reed. I have another book today, and this one is called Song of the Swallows by Leo Politi. And this is about the swallows that come back in the spring through the Los Angeles area, maybe other places too, I'm not sure. This book got a Caldecott Award, which is an award for its pictures. And Leo Politi, who was the author and the illustrator, is an interesting man. Here's a little bit more of his picture on this one. He was a well-known artist and actually had showings in museums. His things are well known, but he also wrote a lot of children's books. And he was kind of interesting because at the time he was writing, there weren't a lot of books written about, children's books written about children that weren't white. A lot of them were all Caucasian children. He included a lot of other races in his books. And I don't know if you know, but if you look inside the book, right before it starts, it always has these little words. One of them that's in there is the copyright date. And the copyright date on this book is 1948. So it means that's the year it was written. So this book is over 70 years old. And I was reading a little bit more about Leo Politi, and he was born in Fresno, California, but his parents were Italian. So when he was little, I think it was 7, he went back to Italy and was there until he was 20. So when he came back to the United States eventually, he spent a lot of time down in Olvera Street in downtown LA, and he did a lot of sketching down there. So quite a few of his books reflect Hispanic children and Hispanic culture. So particularly given the time he was writing, that was pretty unusual. He also has different ones about some Asian American children. So he's kind of an interesting one to look for if you're looking for some different books. They're definitely older, but really, really interesting. So, and I thought this one particularly, if you're in 4th grade and studying California culture this year, this one is set here. So, Song of the Swallows by Leo Politi. At the foot of the low, soft hills near the sea lay a small village of Capistrano. So, you've heard of San Juan Capistrano, and that's where the swallows come back to. So it's down south of us, and that's what he's talking about. The bells of the mission church were ringing on that early morning of spring. Juan came running down the road through the village on his way to the little school near the mission. He ran through the gardens filled with flowers to the patio of the sacred gardens. There he stopped to speak to old Julian. Buenos dias, Julian. Good morning, Julian. Buenos dias, Juan. So I said Julian. I guess in Spanish you would actually say Julian. I pronounced that wrong. Ooh, look at this picture. Switch a little so you can see it better than me. And if you've ever visited the mission of San Juan Capistrano, that's what it's picturing here. It's very cool. Lots of details. Kind of an overview of the whole mission. The book that I read also said one of the reasons that he found Olvera Street and that area so interesting was he was a very devoted Catholic in his Italian, so that really resonated with him. So this book about the mission, that makes sense. Old Julian was the proud bellkeeper of this mission. Many times he had told Juan the story of the mission, but always it seemed new. Long ago, Julian told him, the good brothers of St. Francis came to this country from across the sea. Father Juniper Serra and the brothers walked along the wild trail through the wilderness. With the help of the Indians, they built many mission churches. This is Father Juniper Serra, said Juan, looking up at the statue in the garden. He is my friend. The missions, like the little villages, Julian said. There, the Indians learned to make shoes and harness blankets and hats. Harness blankets and hats, tools and pottery, many of the things they needed in their daily life. Here is the big millstone where they ground corn and wheat. Juan ran his fingers over the big stone. He liked the feel of it. He liked, too, the little hospital where the fathers used to take care of the sick Indians and the barracks for the soldiers who guarded the mission from thieves and pirates. So here is the millstone. On his way to school and on his way home, Juan liked to look at the flowers in the mission garden. They were so gay against the old walls. Julian was the gardener of the mission. He took much pride in showing Juan the plants, for he knew and loved each one of them. Because he gave them such good care, they grew strong and bore bright, fragrant flowers. Many birds came to the garden to nest, for here they were undisturbed. They flew happily among the trees and drank the fresh water from the old fountain. There were hummingbirds, white pigeons, sparrows, and other kinds of birds. Julian always carried crumbs of hard bread in his pockets to feed them. The pigeons came and perched on his shoulder and his hands. But the most joyous birds were the swallows. Juan called them by their lovely Spanish name, Los Golondrinas. There were hundreds of them nesting beneath the roof beams, above the arches, and their twittering filled the gardens with the sweetest music. They made spring a very happy time in Capistrano. Ever since I can remember, Julian told Juan, the swallows have come in the spring on St. Joseph's Day and gone away late in the summer. But how can little birds know it's St. Joseph's Day? Juan asked. That I do not know, said Julian. Juan was full of curiosity about the swallows. He watched them build their small mud houses against the beams of the roof. The female sat quietly on her eggs while the male sang his little twittering song to her. In the evening, Juan saw them huddled close together asleep. When Julian's back was turned, Juan liked to climb the vines to see the nests and count the eggs without touching them. When the nests were blessed with tiny birds, he liked to watch the parents feed the hungry beaks. Here's a picture of there's Julian over here working, and Juan is climbing up the vines to check on the nests. The best time of all was when the swallows taught the baby birds how to fly. One morning, Juan and Julian watched a family of young swallows seated in a row on an iron bar across the arch. One by one, the swallows gave them flying lessons. At first, the little birds tried to flutter. They were so clumsy and awkward. One of them tumbled to the ground. Pobrecito, poor little ones, cried Juan. As he ran to pick him up, he held the baby bird close and soothed him. When they found he was not hurt, Julian set him back on the iron bar. The little swallow seemed eager to get back to his nest. Perhaps he felt that it was feeding time. One day, late in summer, Julian noticed that the swallows were noisier and more excited than usual. It seemed they were getting ready to leave. Juan, he called, the swallows are leaving us. Juan was sad because he knew he would miss them so much. He felt that he knew each one of them, and they were like dear little friends to him. The swallows rose, twittering in the air, and flew toward the south. Juan and Julian watched most motionless until they disappeared beyond the horizon. Julian said, as he always did when the swallows left, "Farewell, Golondrinas, for you we will yearn. May God bless your journey and guide your return." "I shall pray for their return," said Juan. The swallows flew down the coastline. There's the mission, and there they go. You see the ocean and the mission, and they're going south. Look how much, if you visited the mission now, you know it's city everywhere. But look, when this was, there's country all around it, out in the country. "How wonderful the flight of the swallows is," said Julian. "Just try to picture, Juan, the hundreds and thousands thousands of miles they travel, high up in the air, looking down over strange and beautiful lands. I believe that of all the creatures, God has given them the most freedom and happiness. But where are they going? Asked Juan. Some say to a land far south of us. Some say to a green island in the Pacific Ocean, said Julian. No one can really tell, but I do know, Juan, that they will go wherever there are flowers and fresh water, streams, and people who welcome and love them. This gave Juan an idea. The people who welcome them and love them, I will make a garden in front of my house. Then perhaps the swallows will come there to nest. Juan's house was one of the small adobe houses in the village. It had been built in the early days of California. During his vacation, Juan began his garden. He had learned so much about it from Julian. First he dug the earth, then he climbed the edges of the garden. Then he lined the edges of the garden neatly with rocks, planted new flowers, and made the old rosebush climb the post of the porch, and always kept the little pool full of clear water. He's doing a project, isn't he? When the winter months were nearing an end, the new buds began to swell and the trees to bloom again. Soon blossoming trees bent gently over the garden walls. They made lovely patterns against the sky and filled the clear air with fragrance. Juan felt he was going through an enchanted garden. Julian worked hard in the gardens, for St. Joseph's Day was coming. He wanted the gardens to look their best for the swallows' return. The day was tinted red at early dawn on St. Joseph's Day. Soon the sun rose from behind the hills and cast a golden glow over the valley. Juan and his friends came early that morning to greet the swallows. The boys wore their best suits and the girls their newest dresses with flowers and ribbons in their hair. They played games, sang, danced, and acted little plays of olden days when the mission reigned supreme over this rich and fertile valley. As the gay fiesta went on, every now and then the children looked up at the sky. Would the swallows come? Hours of waiting and watching went by. Time dragged into the late afternoon with not a swallow in sight. The children became tired and discouraged. Some of them began to leave. Then Juan, who was standing high on the column of a broken arch near the edge of the playground, saw some little dots far off in the horizon. Vienen los golondrinas! The swallows are coming! Do you see little tiny dots up there? The children jumped up and down with joy. The little dots came nearer. They grew bigger and bigger. Soon hundreds of swallows circled over the mission. Juan ran and hugged Julian. The swallows are here. I thought they would never come. They came late, perhaps. They met a storm on the way. But I told you, Juan, they would return. See how glad they are? The swallows were very much like little folks who had been on a long journey and were happy to be home again. They fluttered and twittered joyously, and the gardens filled the gardens with a sweet sound. Juan and Julian went into the garden and rang the mission bells to tell the people of the valley that spring had now begun. The children sang. Good morning, Mr. Swallow, come from afar. We are glad to see you for St. Joseph's Day. Flitting in the sunshine, we can see you all. Building up your houses at the mission wall. Some of you play music, you could probably play that. Suddenly, Juan remembered something and was anxious to get home. Buenos tardes, Julian. Good evening, Julian, he said, and hurried down the road to the village. You think he's going to check his garden to see if the swallows are there? I do. As he reached home, he was happier still because what he had hoped for had come true. 2 swallows were fluttering about in his garden. They had come there to nest. Wow, he built quite a garden, didn't he? With a lot of rocks and different things he put in his little pond with fresh water that they talked about. That night, when Juan looked out his window, he saw 2 swallows asleep on the rose vine. They were so near that he could feel the throbbing of life through their little bodies. He loved them, for they were 2 dear friends who had come to live close to him for a long while. From afar, in the peace and quietude of the moonlit night, Juan could hear a warm voice singing. It was Julian singing the swallow song. So that was the song on the other page. And still, he can look, he's looking out at the mission. You can see it there. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed Song of the Swallows. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.